Good morning, everybody. It's just a little after 10, so let's get started. We've got quite a bit to get through today, so we'll try and stick to the schedule and maximize everybody's time. So thanks so much for joining us today. We've got a number of things to go through. We ran the face-to-face Eloqua user group last week and effectively have gone through the same topics. So we'll give you a slightly condensed version this week, but please feel free to shoot any questions you might have while we're walking through the various topics. So let's have a look at the agenda and what we're looking at. So first thing we want to do is just give you a quick recap on the refreshed Eloqua 10, have a look at that interface and have a look at a few tips in relation to some of the new functions that are available there. So you've been using it now for a few weeks, although Christina, you've only just recently joined, so you've probably been on it for about a week. So we'll try and help you with a few tips today as well. Next step is we'll look at a few campaign reports, specifically from Insight, and 3 specific reports that I think might help you do some evaluation of the performance of your various campaigns from last year or over whatever period, whether the last quarter or last year, that's fine. We can have a look at that and show you how to go through that process as well. Then what we're going to look at is trigger-based campaigns and looking at how you might be able to use some of the functionality within campaigns and segments specifically to look at some of those high-performing pages on your website from a traffic point of view and looking at various ways to potentially engage with people based on their digital body language or their activity as they're looking over your website. And then finally, we'll have a quick look at the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. So the Marketplace is to your instance of Eloqua as to the Apple App Store is to your iPhone, for instance. So it just enables you to add some third-party applications or apps to Eloqua to enhance the overall performance of the application. So things like social, logging on with Twitter, etc., social sharing buttons, and even webinar plugins like the one we're using today with ReadyTalk. All of those are available through the Oracle Cloud Marketplace and certainly worthwhile having a look at. So the first step today, as promised, is to have a quick look at the new lighter and brighter Eloqua 10. So there's been a number of changes to the application, largely cosmetic, I suppose you could argue, but at the same time, there's been a few additional functions added, which I personally have found really quite helpful. So they range from a consolidated view of campaigns, which is really nice, being able to do what's called a global search within Eloqua, which previously wasn't something you could do. So that's really nice. You just simply type in a keyword and it'll bring back everything that relates to that particular keyword. So that's extremely helpful. In addition to that, there are changes coming for Insight. First of all, we'll see some new dashboards in the coming months, but before the end of the year, I understand, we'll actually see a complete refresh of the Oracle BI, as it's called, which will be the replacement for Insight. So I don't know if I'll be changing the name necessarily, but the actual platform that will deliver Insight will be an Oracle BI tool. So that's a lot to look forward to, a lot more flexibility in relation to report building, and just generally a much nicer experience. But that's fine. We'll work with Insight today and show you a few bits and pieces to get you started. But let's dive right in and have a quick look at the actual interface. Okay, won't be a moment. Okay, look, I've shared the wrong one. Won't be a second, Tim. I'm actually cheating this time. I've logged in my iPad so I can see exactly what you're seeing. Otherwise, it can get a little bit confusing. Let's have a look. All right, so you should be able to see in front of you right now the new Eloqua interface. So let me walk you through some of the key areas of the new interface so you can understand exactly what's available. Now, first thing I want to show you is there are 2 menus across the top here. You can see dashboards, orchestration, etc. What I've got displayed at the moment is actually the new menu, which is available in preview mode. But unless you've actually pressed the button over here called Preview New Menu, you'll see a similar menu that you may have been familiar with. So the new menu will be apparently forced upon us towards the end of this year. So what I've decided to do basically is just click the Preview New Menu, hit Try It, and that's what I'm just running with. I figure if I just run with that, by the time they replace the menus, I'll be all over it, and I'll be able to see exactly what's going on. So without getting confused, because I find I'm already getting confused, but we'll get there. So that's one tip for you. You can just simply access that from the little menu over here on the right-hand side, and you can turn it off or on, whichever works for you. Well, let's have a quick look. So first of all, we have the overview screen. So these three buttons down the left-hand side show you slightly different pieces of information. So we have percentage of contact increases, which is good, an indication of web activity, and also new visitors. So new visitors are a mix of unknown and eventually known contacts coming into your website. So it's good just to get a feel for the level of traffic, and something like that is a good idea to potentially balance with your Google Analytics and also some of the web reports available through Insight, just to get an idea of where that traffic is. So the information down here under recently accessed, this relates specifically to you and what you've been doing. But over here on the right-hand side under activity, you can see what the team has been up to. So you can see Tim and Addie from our team have been looking at various bits and pieces, and so it just gives you a little bit of insight into what the team have been doing. This shortcuts menu is new as well, and is a really neat feature. So what you're able to do is actually personalize these four buttons. Simply click on the pencil, and then pencils appear like so. So if creating emails is not what you do every day in your role, you click on the pencil and then you can adjust whatever it is. So maybe you spend more time uploading emails. Perhaps your emails come to you via HTML. And so there you go. You've adjusted the shortcut now to say upload email, and you're good to go. So you can play around with those and you can adjust all four of those. Let's have a look at the campaigns. So this is one of my favorite pieces, and what it does is something that was just a little bit difficult to see previously. It shows you in a single view all of your current active campaigns. So whether they be a simple email campaign, which you can tell by the icon here with the envelope, or if it's a multi-step campaign, which you can see here as well with a separate icon. And then you've got various pieces of information you can access over here on the right-hand side. So you've got Insight, you've got dashboard reports, and campaign activity reports, all available from there. And with the tabs that you've got across the top, you can access completed this week, so campaigns that were wrapped up, and then anything that you might have scheduled for the following week is available. So at the moment, we don't have anything scheduled, but we've got a few campaigns in play. Now, if your company uses the approval process within Eloqua, you'll also see any approvals here that you need to approve as part of your role. So I think what it's going to do here is load some historical things. We don't use the approval feature within Marketing Cube, but yeah, there's some previous ones here when we were giving a bit of a practice run. So you'll be able to see that information there. You can see here at the top it says there is nothing to review at this particular point. Alrighty, so now let's have a quick look at the menus. So the first one you'll see is my dashboard, and that's where we are right now. If you click on the Oracle logo, that also, no it doesn't, sorry. Let's have a look. You've got Operations Center. So Operations Center just gives you an overview of what's happening within the system, etc. Any notifications, especially if you've got integration running, and those sorts of things, you can access those from there. Under orchestration, you can access campaigns, and with campaigns, you'll move to the campaign menu. I'll just wait for that to catch up. There we go, where you can create your various campaigns, etc. You've also got a range of tools, and so this is where you would access Program Builder, the Events module, if your organization has the Events module, and also general campaign settings as well. But under Assets, this is probably where you'll spend most of your time. So if we click on Emails, for instance, you'll see the menu changes, but effectively the same as we just looked at. So each of the campaign segments, emails, landing pages provide a very similar experience for you. This is where you manage your templates. You can access reporting and dashboards. And there's also a range of useful links here on the right-hand side. And if you're new to Eloqua, the Eloqua Help Center is a great thing for you to visit from time to time. You'll find it's effectively like an online user guide. And so with that, you've got a whole range of instructions available to you. They'll often give you an example of something and then walk you through the process. So you'll find that really, really helpful as you're looking through. You can search and navigate for various things. So depending on your naming convention, simply typing in a beginning code. So you can see here we've been quite busy for the month of February already. With lots of email assets that have been built there. You can look at just those that have been created by you, recently accessed by you, or even recently modified across the system as well. So you've got quite a few ways to find things. So we can click on landing pages, for instance. And again, you'll see basically the same layout, but now we're looking at landing pages. While we're looking and searching, let me show you over here on the far right-hand side the global search tool. Now, the global search tool is really valuable. So if we go to, again, typing in something that reflects our naming convention, and what I've done is typed in 2016-02, which is everything for us that happened in February, you can see here a whole range of assets. So campaigns, we've also got forms and emails, and a range of links, images, etc. So that global search is a new feature and one that I really encourage you to look at using if you're trying to find something that you feel you've lost. You'll probably be able to find it using that particular feature. Okay, so in assets, you'll also find that's where you upload your images, so components for images, any files, PDFs, PowerPoints, Word, etc. that you want to upload, any new field merges you might want to create, or email headers or footers that you need to edit, etc. All available here through assets. Audience, so this is all about the people, and at the end of the day, that's what Eloqua is really all about. Eloqua is all about people and communicating with people. So you can search over here on the right-hand side through the search bar. Generally, the search that we're looking at here relates mostly to emails, and I should spell Marketing Cube correctly. There we go. And so here you can see all of the team at Marketing Cube and the information that we have on those people. Now, if you need to adjust any views, you've got lots of options here to adjust with various views. So you can see for event registrations, we have a slightly different view. I created this one specifically because it's something that we could potentially spit out into Excel for name tags and those sorts of things. Also giving you phone numbers if you need to make phone calls to remind people about events. If it's a face-to-face event, you've got lots of flexibility there in relation to the way you look at the various data. Alrighty, so that's a bit of an overview of the initial changes that you've seen in relation to the new Eloqua. So let me now see if I can take you back. Okay. So I've got a quick poll for you. This is the first time I've used polls in ReadyTalk, so bear with me. But tell me how you rate the new Eloqua 10 interface. I'll give you 10 seconds to see if you can answer that on screen, and we'll see the responses. So 4 is the highest score, by the way, and 1 is the lowest score. Let me know what you think. You know what, Tim? I think I need to revisit this. This is the first time I played with it, and I think perhaps this is not the right interface. But let me know how you go. 4 is your favorite, and 1 is your least favorite. Okay, so it looks like we've got a 3.66 average for I love it. So that's not too bad. That's great news. Thanks, guys. I just wanted to experiment with that ReadyTalk function. So thanks for letting me guinea pig you on that one. Okay, so let's move into the next step, which is Eloqua Insight. So Insight is your reporting module, and as I mentioned earlier, just in the introduction there, Insight, the actual platform that Insight sits on is separate to the Eloqua platform. It's a data warehouse. So it manipulates all of your campaign data and returns it to you in a whole range of dashboards and various types of reports. But what we're seeing at the moment is that Oracle is keen to replace that because it's actually not an Oracle platform. So they obviously want to replace it with an Oracle solution, and the Oracle BI tool that they're replacing it with is going to be outstanding. I've actually seen the Oracle BI tool late last year in a completely separate demo, and was very excited at what I saw in relation to the flexibility and ease of dragging and dropping various pieces of data and information. So we've got lots to look forward to there, which is good. But what I wanted to do today was share with you 3 of my favorite reports that I like to use in order to just get a feel for the performance of my campaigns, also understand the health of the database in relation to the quality of the data that we've got. Very important when you start to consider things like field merges so that you can actually send an email and say, "Good morning, Derek," versus "Good morning, subscriber," or "Good morning, customer," or just simply "Good morning." So the level of personalization that you've got available will obviously depend on the quality of your data, and so that's a big thing to look at. And that final one is new contacts by lead source. And if you're using the lead source original and lead source most recent fields within your forms, etc., this particular report can be really helpful for you. And it also gives you an idea of new contacts that have come into your database within the last week, the last month, the last quarter, etc. And so it helps you get a bit of a feel for where growth is coming from within the database. Okay, so let me go back to my screen and we'll have a look at Insight. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Yep, looks like it's coming up on my screen. Okay, so let's have a look at Insight. So when you first get into Insight, actually I should just go back one step. When you're looking at the standard Eloqua screen, across the top of your screen, you'll see an Insight button. So as soon as you click on Insight, the Insight window will launch, and you'll see the display here with these 4 folders available for you to look at. So what I wanted to do today was look at a couple under Reports and Dashboards. So we click on Reports and Dashboards, and now what you're looking at is what was just on the slide deck a few moments ago. We're going to go straight into campaigns, and I'm going to go straight to campaign analysis. Now you'll notice the icons here with the pie graph and the images. These tell you that they're dashboards. Also the fact that it says dashboard is a bit of an indicator, but we want to go on to campaign analysis. So we double click, and specifically it's campaign analysis overview that I want to look at. So what this one enables you to do is take a holistic view at a very high level in relation to all of your campaigns, or if you wanted to, just a single campaign. But what I want to do is show you, for instance, because we talked about in the lead up to this particular event, looking at the last 12 months and analyzing that last 12 months and getting a feel for your performance as a whole. So all of the campaigns, all the reports available with Insight typically work in the same fashion. Once you get to this point, it really becomes a wizard, and you'll see their steps. They're numbered down the left-hand side, step 1, 2, or 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So first thing we want to do in this case is choose a time frame, and as promised, I want to look at the last 365 days, so the last 12 months. Then because we've chosen a period of time versus a date range, we can skip steps 2 and 3, and we go straight to step 4. So once we get to step 4, what I'm going to do is remove that from the right-hand side. Now, the way this works, I can either move individual and specific campaigns from the left over to the right using the arrows in between and highlighting them, etc. Or if you leave the right-hand side blank completely, Eloqua will automatically return all campaigns that have a start and end date within the last 12 months, because that's the date range that we've selected here at the top of the screen. So I'm going to leave that blank. Coming down to step 5, these unique metrics, you'll probably find when you log in that they're sitting over here on the left-hand side. I always move them over to the right-hand side, and as a result, Eloqua tends to remember that, and so it puts them over there for me. Now, step 6, depending on the size of your organization, step 6 can actually be really helpful. So if you want to focus on just the campaigns in the last 12 months that you've personally built, that is under your login, you can find your user account and move your user account over here to the right-hand side. So if I take Adrian, for example, and Adrian's incredibly busy and he's created a campaign in the last 12 months, so that won't return anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that over on the left-hand side. And again, this will now return all campaigns within the last 12 months created by any user at Marketing Cube. So once you're done, click on the Run Report button that you find in the bottom left-hand corner. And for Eloqua, will now go away, find that relevant information for us, and return it. Now, in relation to recency of data and how fresh the Insight data is, at best, you will find the data and Insight is valid probably within an hour or two, but at worst 24 hours. So I typically find that I either run the report on the day or perhaps the next day from an Insight point of view. But if you're actually wanting information right now about a campaign that's running right now, let me just quickly take you back to the canvas. There's a range of reports that you can access immediately from the campaign canvas, and these can be run typically within a few minutes of you launching. So if you go to the menu over here on the far right-hand side, you've got two. There's the operational reports and then also the Insight reports, which is a quick and dirty campaign analysis report, as I like to call it, a little bit like the one we've just looked at, but it just gives you the nuts and bolts that any digital marketer would want to see. But the operational reports are really helpful. So campaign statistics, for instance, we click on that one. And when that pops up, you'll start to see all the actual numbers. So you're not getting percentages here, you're just getting raw numbers in relation to various activity and what's happening. Okay, so you can see here unique email opens, that's from our first email, 15 click-throughs, 9 of which were unique, etc. No hard, a couple of soft bounce backs there, and then one hard bounce back later on. So that's quite helpful. If you wanted to have a look at the quick Insight report from a campaign analysis point of view, again, your screen will refresh, and that'll appear with just the very typical type of data that you would expect to see from, and if I just make that a bit bigger, that might help you on your screen. So yeah, gives you all your sends. You're now looking at some percentages in relation to unique opens, etc., click-through rates, form submissions, total time spent on the registration page, etc., all that sort of information. So you've got a range of reports there available to access. So again, you've got reports available directly from the campaign canvas, or if we go back into Insight, you can see now we've got a huge report of all of the campaigns that Marketing Cube ran in the last 12 months. Now, if you go to the very end of that report, you'll see these navigation buttons down here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. There's 3 pages of reports. That'll just refresh for a moment. When we get to the bottom, it'll also show you some totals. So I find the best way to do this is generally to spit it out into Excel, export it, and then start to do some analysis, do some slicing and dicing, etc., to get a bit of a better feel as to maybe some benchmarking, looking at what your average open rate should be or your unique open rate. But the unique data is the data that you really want to focus on when you're looking to analyze your various campaigns. So how do you export? Very easily. Straight to the home menu here. There's a little chevron. Click on that. Go straight down to export. And I usually choose Excel with formatting. Once you've chosen Excel with formatting, you'll come to a new window. And generally speaking, you can just leave it simply as it is. Click on Export, and you're off and running. And so it's downloading right now. And then you'll be able to open that directly into Excel. And you won't be able to see that because I'll have to share Excel with you. Okay, and then Excel will open, of course, and you'll be able to see you'll be able to see all of that magical data sitting in Excel. So a really helpful way to be able to get a bit of a feel for what's going on with the campaigns at a high level. Work on your statistics, kind of work out which have been your best performing campaigns, which have been your least performing campaigns, and then you can do a whole lot more in relation to analyzing and getting a good feel for really what were the most successful campaigns that you ran over the last 12 months. Okay, so that's one of those sessions. Okay, let's have a look at another report. So the other report that I like to look at is the database health report. What this one does, it really gives you a great breakdown and a better understanding of exactly what data looks like within your system and the quality of that data and how clean that particular data is. So let me share that with you again. Okay, so now you can see we're still in Insight. This time we've gone into contacts, and specifically what we want to do now is look here at the database health dashboard. So let me double click on that one. Now being a dashboard, it'll just simply load with relevant information so you can see what's going on. Okay, so I'll just make that a bit bigger for you so you can see a little bit easier. Okay, so let's have a look at what we can see here. So you've got three options across the top here. You've got data presented over the last fiscal quarter, the last month, or simply the last calendar quarter, which is that last one. Now, in relation to fiscal quarter, when your instance of Eloqua was set up originally, one of the questions we asked you was to understand your financial year and your reporting year. So the fiscal quarter will reflect whatever your particular management of the financial year is within your organization. And so you can see what's going on there. We can start to click around and look at growth of the database. And so here we can see new contacts, and we can see that in May last year we had, at Marketing Cube, we had a decent blip of a rise. This one here in January this year was a list we purchased, so that's why you can see that one's grown significantly. Engagement is really important and certainly worthwhile looking at. So when we can see here around the sort of November, December, January period, we've got a bit of a dip happening there, which would make sense in our market largely with that summer holiday period. But you can see it's slowly starting to pick up there as well, which is good news. So the blue is our total reachable, and then also the active is scooting across there. And then inactive as well. So there's a lot of people you need to work with, and you'll typically find, depending on how you segment your campaigns, that when you start to look at these sort of reports, you start to realize that there's a big chunk of people there that are not overly engaged, and so maybe there's room for you to do some sort of campaign to look at re-engaging those particular people as well. So that's reachable. You can click here and change that to unreachable. So you can see now what you've got is total unsubscribes and bounce backs. And so there's room there for database to clean out, I suppose, and also probably good to communicate that information through to the CRM team if your instance of Eloqua is integrated. You can choose the various time frames or parameters here. So we can go maybe over 12 months. That information will then refresh, like so. Over the top left-hand corner here, you can also look at contact field completeness. Now, contact field completeness is incredibly helpful because what this does, it really helps you realize if you're going to be using field mergers within your various campaigns, there's lots of things you can do in order to make sure that's actually functioning. So if you're using the city, for instance, where somebody's living in your field mergers, you want to make sure that you've actually got that information. And so you can see here we have pretty good, what have we got, about 70, just over 70% of our contacts, we know where they live. That's good. So we can use that information. Certainly from a first name point of view, where we're up to 98.1% of the database. And of course, 100% for email addresses. You can't have a contact in Eloqua without an email address. So, and then lead source original and most recent, and we'll look at those in a little bit more detail just shortly. Also, state or province is an important one for us in relation to knowing exactly where people are, which should tie in obviously with city and location. So that's helpful when trying to understand how to personalize your communications. All right, let's go back and have a look at the next one. So the next one is new contacts by lead source. So you can see here on screen, here's an example of the report actually. It's probably no need for me to run it. I can just simply show you what's going on here. So this information, you set the date parameter again, like you saw with the first report that we ran. Doesn't really matter. It can be the last week, the last month, whatever it is, or you can set a specific start and end date to that particular report. but it gives you an idea as to where the growth is coming from. So if we just look at this in a bit of detail, you can see, for instance, we ran a webinar in early, when was it, early February, the webinar New Eloqua 10 UI. And so it looks like we picked up 2 new contacts as a result of that particular webinar. Let's have a look. We're running a meetup this weekend. So not this weekend. This week on Wednesday and Thursday in Sydney and Melbourne. So as a result of that, we've increased our contact database by 20 unique individuals. So that's good news. And then there's a little bit of activity from some regular campaigns we have running in relation to white papers, etc., and other activity that's occurred. So it becomes quite helpful just to get a bit of a feel for where the activity is coming from over the last little while. Now, if you're not clear on how to do that, that's really a strong use of the lead source original and lead source most recent fields, which I'd encourage you to be adding to all of your forms so that information is stamped onto the contact. And as I said, if you're not clear on how to do that, that's fine. Let's have a chat at some point and I can walk you through that. Okay. Do you have any questions in relation to Insight? Any questions at all? Okay. Well, I've got another poll here for you, so curious to see what your thoughts are. I think you need to number these from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 being the most recent thing or the most popular thing you do. This range doesn't really work, but hopefully you'll figure it out. So for me, it would at least be once a week. Let's see what happens if I just choose one. No, I have to choose all of them. Sorry, guys. As I said, just learning on how to do these polls. So maybe just assign number 6 to your first preference and then see if that works. So here we go. Okay, so the large result here is I've not really used Insight before. That's fine. So if you need some help on Insight, give us a call, or maybe we can spend a dedicated session. But hopefully today's given you the basics. That very first campaign report we pulled on the campaign analysis overview, the process of going through and selecting the time frame and then looking at the dates or then selecting the campaigns or not selecting them, etc. That process is pretty much the same for all of the reports within Eloqua, except for the dashboards. The dashboards you just simply click on and then you interact with. But if you need a hand with that, just simply reach out and we can talk a little bit further about that one. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's now have a look at trigger-based campaigns. So the concept of a trigger-based campaign really enables you to access a person's digital body language and then do something specifically as a result of that behavior. So the first thing we need to understand about trigger-based campaigns is that the people that you're triggering a communication to need to be a known contact within your database. So there can be various ways to generate that trigger. So if somebody, for instance, is in your database, they're known to you, they've previously engaged in various campaigns, the trigger-based campaign can send them an email automatically based on certain behavior. So typically, one way I tend to look at it is to look at maybe your website as an example and identify 3 pages potentially on the website. Why 3? Just an example. So 3 pages where you're getting the greatest amount of traffic and perhaps you have forms on those pages, and so this could be part of a form of management type of campaign, or it could just simply be you've got installed base, as in customers who could be coming back to your website. Now, if you have a customer who's bought product X, but they're spending quite a bit of time looking at product Y, what you're able to do is analyze that behavior and then potentially engage with them automatically based on their engagement with you and the various pages they've looked at. So the person doesn't need to fill in a form or anything like that. They're just simply looking at various online assets that you've got. So again, the caveat is they need to be in your database already and have engaged with you, so Eloqua knows who they are. So once we know who they are, then we can actually start to engage with them. So let's go into Eloqua, because what we need to do is build a segment and then also add that segment to a multi-step campaign. So let me just get Eloqua ready here for you. Okay. Alrighty, so first of all, we need to start with the segment and build the segment so that it makes sense in relation to what you're trying to do. So again, I'll just increase that screen size so that you can see that a little bit easier, hopefully, on your screen. So, okay, just wait for that to load. Okay, here we go. So in this particular example, I am looking for anyone that has submitted a form. That could be my trigger. And also looking specifically for people who are outside of Australia. So, because what we're going to do, we found that we were getting a number of people from outside Australia who were accessing some of our content, etc. And then they were just kind of really sitting there, because then when I would do most of our segmentation, we really tend to target people within New South Wales, Queensland, ACT, Victoria, etc. by state. So we were sort of missing these people. So I thought, why don't we build a campaign that specifically targets these people? And so what we do is we have some exclusions in place as well. So we want to make sure that they're not currently a customer. In this case, we're really just targeting prospects and those who are outside of Australia. And in this instance for us, it was a particular user guide that they were downloading on a fairly regular basis. And so that becomes the starting point. That's how Eloqua finds the people to actually drop into the campaign. So if we come back to the campaign canvas, and I'll just wait for that to refresh on the screen. Here it is. Okay, so that's the segment sitting right there. And so what I've done is the first thing following that segment is to put a wait step. Because what I don't want to happen is for someone to be merrily out there in Google trying to find something, they stumble across a Marketing Cube asset where they see a form and they're like, yep, I want that information, so I'm going to fill in that form. That's great. They do that. We then send them an email with the information they've requested. If I didn't put this wait step in place, they would receive another email from us within about 15 minutes. And that's probably just a little bit too much. So first thing we want to do on the campaign canvas is choose this option, which is called Add Members Regularly until the campaign is deactivated. So what I've done is I've asked Eloqua to check at least every day to see if anybody meets that filter criteria. If they meet the filter criteria, we drop them into the canvas. We then wait for 4 days, and then we send out the first communication. And actually, I think, sorry, the actual segment we looked at was this one, which was the outside Australia. And so that information. So you can see I've got 2 people sitting here right now. If I double click on that, we've got 2 people sitting there, and they'll eventually work their way through. And so then they wait, I check to see if they've opened the communication. If they've opened the communication, then what we do is move them through into our general nurturing campaign. And if we scroll down just a little bit further, you can see that information there. We're moving them to another campaign, in which case is our top of funnel campaign. So a trigger-based campaign can really do all sorts of different things. You can be very specific about who it is you want to target. But probably the initial and the low-hanging fruit is looking at your installed base, your customers. And if they're doing X and looking at X, and they have X installed, you've sold it to them already, and now they're looking at Y, you could build a trigger-based campaign to automatically engage with those people. So that's trigger-based campaigns. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. Let me just check to see if we have any questions. Okay, all right. Let's go back to our agenda. Okay, so the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. The Oracle Cloud Marketplace is, as I said earlier, it really is to Eloqua as the App Store is to the iPhone or the Chrome. I don't know what the Chrome thing's called, but the Chrome Marketplace, whatever that's called, to your Android phone, etc. So you'll find within the Marketplace a whole swag of information, but let me show you the easiest place to navigate to in order to find it. So typically, you can either bookmark it, which probably makes a lot of sense, or you can access it through Topliners. Now, what is Topliners? If you've not heard of Topliners before, Topliners is the online community for Eloqua users, and you'll find it's a really helpful tool with loads of people, thousands of people in fact, who are using Eloqua, and you'll find lots of helpful information. So when you're looking at any of your individual assets here, you've got all these useful links over here on the right-hand side, and so you can come through here and have a look. So community is Topliners. So if we click on any of these, if we click on Learn, for instance, what will happen is you'll be logged straight into or taken directly to Topliners. You will need to log in if you wanted to look at some specific information. But the tabs across the top here, there's one called Find Apps. So if you click on Find Apps, you'll be taken to the Oracle Cloud Marketplace and specifically taken to the Marketing Cloud section of that page. So let me give you an example. So if we type in, say, social and hit go, a whole range of options will appear on the screen in front of you. Now, there are various apps. Some are free, some are not. You'll find a range of apps from Oracle which are free. You can actually use the filter option here at the top as well. And from the filter, click on free and apply that filter. It'll then resort those for you. The one that we use the most from a social point of view is probably the social sharing app. And so the social sharing app enables you to share Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, I'm going to go blank now. Twitter, help me Tim if you're there. No? Let's have a look. Does it say? It should say right here somewhere. Let's have a look. Yeah, here we go. Twitter, LinkedIn, Reddit, Facebook, and Google+. And so that enables you to put various sharing options. Let me show you what they look like. Look at a registration form. And there they are right there. Those four little grey buttons is the actual app installed, and that'll load on your screen in just a moment. There they are. So when you see them in the editor, they just look like four little buttons, but when you actually view them online, you'll be able to see they appear like so. So they'll be very familiar to people with the type of icons that you would expect with Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Google+, and Reddit is the other one. Reddit is probably more used in the US market, is my experience, and potentially here in Australia, but you've got the option to add it. Okay. So the various apps you've got available, it's really quite extensive, and you really need to spend a little bit of time in there just to get a bit of a feel for what's available and what the options are and what you can do. If you're using WebEx, GoToWebinar, or ReadyTalk, there are connectors available at no charge for each of those. So you've got plenty of options there. Thank you, Tim. Reddit, I just saw the message. Then you've also got other apps that enable you to drop iframes onto web pages, for instance. That one's quite helpful if you just want to drop, say, the front page of the Sydney Morning Herald onto an Eloqua landing page. You can embed that quite easily. You can embed YouTube videos, or you could use, so there's a YouTube app to do that, or you could use the iframe piece or the embed app to just add anything. So once you've got maybe a video with some other video platform, you've got greater control there over what you do. So there's a whole swag of apps to play with. And what we might do is when we send out some notes following the meeting is just give you some ideas perhaps on some of the more common apps. Now in relation to adding those apps to your instance of Eloqua, you will need to have administrator access in order to do that. So if you don't have administrator access, you need to find out who your administrator is, and have a chat with them about getting those installed. They really are quite simple to install, most of them. It's really just a few clicks through. Some require configuration. Signing on with LinkedIn, for instance, requires configuration, and you actually have to have a paid service with LinkedIn in order to use that one. So hence we don't use that one. But you'll find a whole swag of things there to play with and to choose from. Do you have any questions in relation to those apps and some of the options that are available to you? Okay. No questions there at the moment. Okay. Well, this is the Q&A section, and I think we should all be unmuted.
The conference has been unmuted.
Okay. So if you guys have any questions, happy to take those questions right now. We've got about 10 minutes before we wrap up. But if there's no questions, we might call it a wrap. I did have one favor to ask of you. I've got one more poll. I think this one's going to be easier to figure out. So tell me, how did you enjoy the webinar today? Was it helpful? Was the information of value, etc.? And we can go from there. Okay, everybody strongly agrees. So Tim, I don't know if you're influencing the results there, but somebody agrees. Excellent. So if you'd like to hear of anything else in particular, or you'd like us to focus on some other specific points, please send through some emails. Let us know. Happy to adjust. The whole point of these user groups is they're up to you. So happy for you to join and provide feedback on the sessions and any particular topics that you'd like to see covered. But thanks again. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great to have you with us, and we will see you at your offices over the coming weeks. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great day.